In this video, I'm going to tell you why the Sigma 16mm f1.4 is still the best APS-C lens for YouTube. So I've been using the Sigma 16mm for about a year now, and I've used it for nearly all of my YouTube videos since getting it. And it was a lens that I'd actually held off getting for quite a long time despite hearing how good it was, because I was thinking, do I want a fixed focal length, which basically means this lens doesn't zoom in and out, it's only at 16mm. Is that really going to fulfill my YouTube needs? But now I totally get the hype about this lens. The Sigma 16mm is available for Sony E mount, Canon EF-M mount, Micro Four Thirds, and L mount cameras. But what makes it specifically good for YouTube? First up is how wide the lens is. The 16mm part of the name is the focal length of this camera, which is essentially how wide or how zoomed in a shot will be with a particular lens. 16mm is pretty wide angle, which is perfect for an indoor shot like this, which YouTube videos will be like a lot of the time. You can fit in a lot all around me, with the camera being quite close to me. This is great if you are shooting in limited spaces, if you're recording in a bedroom, for example, which is quite common for YouTube videos, or a small studio space like this where you can't necessarily set the camera a long way back. One criticism that you might find of a lens like this is that it can make your facial features look a little bit exaggerated. So, for example, if I move closer to the lens, you can see that if you were right up close, it does distort the kind of look of your features, your nose and mouth look a bit bigger. So as long as you can just set a little bit further back, and I'm probably less than a meter away from the lens here, it does look very, very good for YouTube videos. The second reason why this lens is so good for YouTube is its low light performance. The f1.4 in this lens's name refers to the maximum aperture. A low aperture number, so f1.4 is low, means that the camera's aperture ring is wide. A wide aperture ring means that it is allowing in more light. Letting in more light means that it will perform better when the lighting situation is quite poor or dark, or just your general lighting is low. So for example, other lenses that you may have, if you are using a Sony APS-C camera such as the Sony a6000 or the Sony ZV-E10, it likely came with the 16 to 50mm kit lens. So you might automatically think, well, that's 16mm as well, that'll be just as wide angle, it'll perform just as well, and you'll also have that zoom range. Well, not in low light. That has an aperture range of 3.5 to 5.6, which means at 16mm its aperture is f3.5, which means that it will be considerably darker than the Sigma 16mm f1.4. But basically it just means that this lens, the Sigma 16mm f1.4, will perform better in low light. So in this room here, I've got a couple of extra lights. So it means that already the lighting situation is quite good. But for example, if I turn my main light off for a second, how much darker the room is like this. And this might be the kind of situation that you've got, or you want to shoot at night time, or just in a space where you can't control the lighting so much. Well, letting in more light means that you'll still get a clear image compared to other lenses. Other lenses will have to lighten up the image artificially by using ISO. ISO essentially uses artificial light to brighten up your image, but this adds noise which doesn't necessarily look very good. I'll put in a quick example now of me shooting with the kit lens in exactly the same situations, and you'll probably be able to see that difference, the amount of grain there is in the image. So this is an example of the low light performance using the 16 to 50mm kit lens. The lighting situation is exactly the same as I was using with the Sigma 16mm, so you can see that the shot is a lot more grainy, a lot darker, and just generally doesn't look as clear as it did even in low light with the Sigma 16mm. The Sigma 16mm is perfect in that regard. It means that you can shoot indoors or in low light without your shot looking too grainy or noisy. Something else a wide aperture of f1.4 gives you is blurrier backgrounds, and what I mean by this is that everything behind me you will notice is very slightly blurry, whereas my face is still nice and crisp and clear. This is something that you will get from wide aperture lenses, which does look very professional for this type of shot. Of course, you can control how blurry those backgrounds are by increasing the aperture number, so turning it up to something like f12, which I'll show a quick example of now. So here you can see me recording in aperture of f10, a lot more of the background is in focus. This type of effect is definitely desirable for stuff like vlogs or YouTube videos or even photography where you want blurry backgrounds, but the main subject of your shot, usually yourself, to be perfectly in focus. It will give your videos and photography a professional edge that you wouldn't get from a lens with a narrower aperture. And if you want to check out how this lens performs for photography, please check out this link here, which is my full review with plenty of sample videos and photography. And if you're enjoying this video, please consider subscribing to the channel and dropping a like on the video. Another good reason to pick up this lens is how sharp and clear the image you will get from it is. Hopefully you'll agree that this video here does look particularly sharp. I'm using the Sigma 16mm lens with the Sony ZV-E10. So not a particularly high-end combination of camera and lens, fairly achievable. I know the ZV-E10 is a newer camera, but still I've used this lens for a long time on cameras such as the Sony a5100 and the Sony a6000, and you'll find that the results will be pretty similar to this. And the sharpness will be a noticeable upgrade compared to the kit lens. So now let's talk about the price of this lens. And unfortunately, if you are on a budget, it isn't the cheapest lens in the world. It costs around $360, about £340 brand new. But I would definitely say it is worth looking out on the second-hand market for. I bought mine second-hand, probably around $100 cheaper than brand new, so certainly worth looking out for. So clearly this lens is an investment, and if you look around on the market you will find other APS-C wide-angle lenses that are considerably cheaper, but I think most of the time you will find that these are manual focus. Now manual focus lenses are almost always cheaper than autofocus lenses, but it does mean that you can't just sit in front of the camera and expect yourself to always be in focus and follow you around the room if you move to make sure that you are still in focus. So this is really the main reason why this lens is a little bit more expensive than a lot of those other wide angle, wide aperture lenses that you may find, is that it has autofocus, and the autofocus performance is pretty good. I don't find any issues with it being particularly slow at autofocusing or not catching autofocus quickly enough. The only very slight downside of it is that you can hear the autofocus very quietly if you are, say, recording with the camera's onboard microphones or you're in a particularly quiet environment. But right now you can't hear it while I'm recording this video, so it isn't a huge issue, but something worth bearing in mind that you might just be able to pick up the sound of the autofocus. So the Sigma 16mm f1.4 is an amazing wide-angle, wide-aperture lens, great for recording YouTube videos, and is definitely the perfect upgrade from the kit lens. If you definitely don't need zoom, because remember it's fixed focal length, so you can't zoom in and out from here, you'll always have to move the lens closer, but it not having zoom is why it can have that wide aperture, which means nice professional looking blurry backgrounds and really great low light performance. So the price of course will be an issue if you are on a strict budget, but there are good second-hand deals out there for this lens, and overall it will feel like a huge upgrade from a lens such as the 16 to 50mm kit lens. If you do want to pick up one of these lenses, I will leave Amazon links in the description. What lens do you use for YouTube? Let me know in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel and dropping a like on the video. But until next time, see ya.